Israeli troops have pulled back to the edges of Gaza. The first hostages have been released and many Palestinians have returned to what remains of their homes in the first few days of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal, stopping fighting for only the second time since the war began with the terror group's October 7th, 2023 cross-border onslaught. Now, if the deal's implementation goes according to plan, there will be no fighting in Gaza for at least, 6 weeks, and the dozens of Israeli hostages and hundreds of Palestinian security prisoners will be freed while more aid flows in. So the question is whether the ceasefire will survive beyond the first phase, how it is expected to unfold, and what makes it so precarious. And joining us via video link to discuss this is Na'eem Jeenah, senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. Mr. Jeenah, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
So much has been said about this ceasefire arrangement. Just how fragile is this ceasefire deal, and what are the primary risks that could cause it to collapse?
Very fragile. But first, let me just do two little corrections. One is Israeli troops have not withdrawn yet. The first set of that withdrawal would take place after today's exchange. Secondly, that those held, about 11,000 Palestinians held by Israel, are not security prisoners. Many of them are doctors, journalists, just ordinary civilians who have been kidnapped over the past 15 months, both in Gaza and the West Bank. They were not arrested for any particular reason. Some of them just rounded up, who will be released. In terms of the fragility, I mean, it's been clear from day one that from the Israeli side there isn't a real commitment to the ceasefire, and certainly no commitment to ensuring that it's a lasting ceasefire. We might remember even when it was supposed to have taken effect, Israel came up with all kinds of reasons of why it shouldn't, and then it didn't start on time as it was supposed to have. The big issue is the first phase of the ceasefire, which we are now in, is supposed to last for 42 days, 6 weeks, and thereafter, and on the 16th day, so next week or thereabouts, they should begin negotiations about the second phase. Israeli politicians have, many of them, made it clear that they're not interested in a second phase, that they negotiated all of this in phase 1, 2, and 3 in Doha, but they really don't want to implement anything beyond the first phase after they get those first 33 captives released, and they actually want to continue bombing and destroying Gaza thereafter. So the fragility of this is extremely high. Palestinians really should be worried that at any moment Israel might decide that it doesn't want to continue and start bombing them again.
Now, Mr. Jeenah, when you say that Israel has not shown real commitment to the deal, it could perhaps be an insinuation that Israel could potentially not stick to its end of this deal. I mean, given the history of ceasefire violations, what mechanisms, if any, are in place to monitor compliance on either side?
No, it's not an insinuation. This is the statements coming out from the Israeli cabinet, including the prime minister. So it's not an insinuation. It's not an analysis from me. I'm just saying what they have said. I mean, the finance minister just a couple of days ago said that they must ensure that after the first lot of captives are released, that Palestinians will continue screaming. So that's their position. Sorry, your question was what is the?
What are the mechanisms that would ensure that both sides stick to their end of the deal?
So the three mediating states, Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, have set up what they call an operations room in Cairo, in Egypt. And they say that that operations room will monitor any violations of the ceasefire and then attempt to bring things back on track.
Okay.
So, we expect that, we hope that will work, but with Israel's belligerence, there's no guarantee.
Now, let's talk about the role that external actors like Iran, the United States, or even the broader international community will play in maintaining or undermining this agreement.
You know, the real important international player is the United States. The United States has enabled this genocide in Gaza for the past 15 months. It's the United States that will decide whether it wants to put sufficient pressure on Israel to stick by the ceasefire or not. That is the only, not even the United Nations has the kind of influence over what is taking place as the US does. And so whether the ceasefire holds, whether genocide continues or not, depends on what happens in the White House.
And how do the underlying grievances and as well as the power asymmetries between Israel and Hamas impact the chances of sustained peace?
Well, it's clear that Israel is the stronger party. I mean, you know, the resistance forces in Gaza have prevented Israel from achieving a victory over 15 months, which is quite a substantial period for ragtag militias. But nevertheless, Israel is the stronger party. And, you know, they also have the support of the superpower, the United States. And so in terms of whether the ceasefire holds or not, the deck is stacked in Israel's favor. They can tomorrow decide, or they can today decide not to release the Palestinians that they've kidnapped, who are supposed to be released, 200 of them, and then tomorrow decide to start bombarding Gaza again, and no one's going to stop them as long as the United States is on their side. And so the asymmetry is not just what is in Gaza, but the asymmetry is a global one.
Now, Mr. Jeenah, does this ceasefire address broader issues such as the blockade on Gaza or maybe the occupation of Palestinian territories, or is it solely a tactical pause?
The latter. It's solely a tactical ceasefire, hopefully not just a pause, but a longer-term ceasefire. But yes, just tactical. It does not address the bigger issues for which the operation of 7th of October 2023 took place, the occupation of Palestinian territory by Israel, Israel's colonialism, Israel's apartheid, etc. None of that is addressed. And in fact, what we're seeing over the past week is that while there's been a pause, as you say, in Gaza, Israel has gone full out, what the UN is describing as warlike attacks in the West Bank, in residential areas in the West Bank. Several Palestinians have been killed there, including children. And so it seems that what it's done is it's shifted its focus to the West Bank. And of course, Israel is talking now about annexing the West Bank, which is a bigger territory than Gaza, and which it seems Donald Trump might agree with.
All right, Mr. Jeenah, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if all the sides in the Israel-Hamas conflict reach the third phase, well, it's likely to be, well, less contentious, and the bodies of the remaining hostages would be returned in exchange for a 3 to 5 year reconstruction plan in Gaza. But who will pay for it also remains unclear. So that was senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection, Na'eem Jeenah.